Right in. Today, we're going to break down a really crucial piece of legislation that affects millions of people every single day, India's POSH Act of 2013. This quote from our source material really gets to the heart of it all. It's such a powerful way to frame this discussion. Safety isn't just about what's not there, it's about what is there. Dignity, respect, and just the freedom to do your job without fear. And that's exactly what the POSH Act aims to build. And this is the core idea, right? We're not talking about some kind of perk or a company benefit. This is about establishing that a safe workplace isn't a privilege your employer gives you. It's a fundamental right owed to every working woman. But to really get why this law is so important, you have to understand where it came from. Why was it even needed? Well, the whole thing started with one person's incredibly painful and courageous story. This is Banwari Devi. Her fight for justice, well, it became the catalyst for this entire legal movement. Her case basically blew the lid off a massive, glaring gap in the legal system at the time. Her case was such a shock that it spurred women's rights groups into action. They filed what's called a public interest litigation, taking this systemic problem all the way to the nation's highest court. And what happened next was huge. The Supreme Court essentially said, "You're right, there's a legal black hole here." And they stepped in to create a mandatory set of rules that became known as the Vishaka Guidelines. For all intents and purposes, this became the law of the land.
But check this out. This timeline shows just how long of a road this was. 16 years. It took a full 16 years to get from those court-mandated guidelines to a formal national law passed by Parliament. That is some serious legal perseverance right there.
Okay, so what exactly is this law that was 16 years in the making? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what it does, who it protects, and where it applies. So, the most important thing to grasp is that this act literally changed the game. It elevates workplace safety from just a good idea to an undeniable fundamental right for every single woman. Okay, so a big question people always have is, who does this actually apply to? And the answer is, well, it's really broad, and that's on purpose.
I mean, look at this. It's not just your regular 9-to-5 employees. We're talking temporary staff, consultants, daily wage earners. It even includes students and visitors. It covers basically any woman who sets foot in that workplace.
So just as broad as who is protected is the answer to where they're protected. The definition of a workplace is way bigger than you might think. And this right here is what makes the law so incredibly powerful. It's not just about corporate offices. We're talking government buildings, private companies, hospitals, schools, NGOs, sports facilities, and get this, even a private home can be considered a workplace under this act. That is a massive expansion of protection. All right, so we know what the rights are, but how does the act actually enforce them? How does it work in the real world? It all comes down to 3 core pillars. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. First, you've got prohibition. That's just flat out defining and banning sexual harassment. Then there's prevention, which is all about the employer being proactive with training and awareness. And finally, redressal. This is the big one. It's the actual system for filing a complaint and getting justice. You absolutely need all 3 for the whole thing to work. And at the absolute center of that redressal system is a group called the Internal Complaint Committee, or the ICC for short. And here's the number you really need to remember, 10. Just 10 employees. If a company has 10 or more people, they are legally required to have an ICC. No excuses. That is a huge, huge deal for accountability, especially in smaller organizations. And you might be wondering, what about those really small places? Well, the law has that covered too. For them, complaints go up to the district level, and they have to make sure everyone knows exactly who to call and how to get help. So the legal stuff is all there, right? The framework exists. But the real work, and this is what our source material really drives home, is turning that law on paper into a real, living, breathing culture of safety and respect. And this says it all, doesn't it? A law gives you the rule book, but real change, that starts when we actually start talking to each other about this stuff, openly and honestly. That is exactly why the Act puts the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of employers. It's their job to proactively build that safe community through education, training, and making sure everyone knows their rights and responsibilities. So that really leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? The law's there, the structure's in place. So what's our part in all this? How do each of us, individually, help turn a workplace policy into a lived reality that everyone can count on?